readers. Welcome to Write a Killer Mystery. My name is ZaraAltair, and this is where we talk about making a good mystery great if you're a writer. Today I want to talk about mystery suspects and 3 important clues to managing your suspects to keep your readers going to the end. Okay, first, before we get to that, I want to thank my supporters on Patreon who help provide this video series and also support my mystery writing. And if you'd like to support this show, there's a link to Patreon in the description below, and I'd certainly love to welcome you. There's all special treats for my patrons, so take a look, and I'd love to see you in the group. All right, so suspects are the nuts and bolts of creating your mystery puzzle. Mystery readers love a puzzle. That's why they're there, and they want to solve the puzzle before your detective does, but we don't want them to do that. We want to keep them going until the very, very end, when your detective finally figures out who the villain is. So the role of your mystery suspects is to help develop the puzzle and to create places where those clues come up, and for whatever the reason, your detective may be misguided in how they interpret a clue or how they interpret a suspect, and you as a writer have a murder to solve, and your detective needs to solve that murder. You have the villain. These are the base elements of the story. But to keep that story going, your suspects shape the puzzle. So you need 3-dimensional characters with unique traits to baffle your reader. That's the whole thing. We want to keep those readers mystified. And you want to keep them guessing, so they keep turning the pages of your book. Okay, so what is it that makes a good mystery suspect? For a good mystery, the prime job of your suspect is to keep your reader guessing. That's their role in the story. They're prolonging the suspense of who did it. And to make that all work, you need to connect the reader with each suspect and make each suspect memorable and raise questions about that suspect's authenticity. So each suspect needs to be distinct, and from their name to their personality to their underlying motives. Each character will stay in your reader's mind if they are unique. So creating suspects is much more than putting them in a lineup in your head and going suspect 1, suspect 2, suspect 3. If you really want them to work in your story, you need them to be unique and memorable so your reader identifies with that suspect. They don't have to like the suspect. The suspect can be a complete jerk, but your reader is like, oh yeah, I know that guy. They know somebody just like your suspect. So a couple of things to watch out for. If your suspects are too similar, it's hard for your reader to remember which one is which as they go along, and maybe it's been 50 pages since the last time they met that suspect. So when there's that gap in your story, there needs to be a way for your reader to identify that suspect right away. You don't want them to stop reading because they have to go back and go, now who was that? So you don't want them asking if Sally is the one with the border terrier who wins all the agility trials, or was she the one who has, needlework samplers all sprinkled all over her house. So you want to make sure that there's something that creates a distinct personality for each suspect. So let's talk a little bit about how to differentiate your suspects. Well, the first thing is give them a very unique name. So a unique name in your story. It doesn't have to be an exotic name that no one's ever heard of. It just needs to be unique in your story. So you want to start each name with a separate letter of the alphabet. For example, Sally and Susie or Jim and John, those names are too close. 2 S's, 2 J's. They may be clear in your head, but it can be confusing for your reader. So instead, try diverse names. So Sally and Genevieve, and Jim and Arturo. So right away, they have a name that isn't going to be even mildly associated with another suspect. And then another way to help with that distinction is to give them a unique physical characteristic. A perpetual frown, somebody who's perpetually frowning, flame red hair, a limp, a lisp, something that helps your reader remember the character from their last appearance in your story. And then I think really important is to diversify each suspect's relationship to the victim. So one's a friend, one's a business partner, one's a relationship rival, a relative, an opponent, a resentful neighbor. Just make each of their roles in relationship to the victim different as well. This can be a little more challenging if family members are involved, but that's why it's really important to make your suspect's personality distinct. Each suspect needs their unique, distinct reason for disliking or hating the victim. These are always revealed right at the beginning of the story, but as you do your character development work, you need to know what it is about the victim that pushed that suspect's buttons, okay? So every suspect needs a secret to cover up. It may have nothing to do with the murder, but it's an underlying motive for that character for not being forthcoming with your detective. So just the whole job of these suspects is to thicken the soup. Your detective has to wade through all this stuff and sort out what's meaningful from what isn't meaningful. The whole idea is to create relevant suspects who have unique traits, relationships to the victim, and reasons to lie. And if you get that in your head, you're going to have each suspect as a very distinct personality with distinct relationships to the victim, distinct relationships to each other. It really helps your reader remember each suspect and question each suspect's role in relationship to the victim. The whole purpose of your suspect, each one of them, is to keep your reader guessing, right? So along with that, you want to control how many suspects you have in your story. While you want to keep your reader guessing, You don't want to confuse them. Those are two separate things. Confused readers stop reading. So that's why you need an ideal number of suspects, not too few and not too many. Too few suspects will make it easier for your reader to eliminate possibilities, and it's quite possible they will figure it out before the end of the story, which is not what you, as the author, want to have happen. So if you have fewer than 3 suspects, your reader won't feel challenged. So you want to have at least 3 and probably more. And then on the other side, if you create too many suspects, your reader may feel confused but not challenged. There's a difference, okay? They're reading your book because they want the challenge of guessing the villain. And if you have too many, it's like it's confusing. So that whole what I talked about previously about having each suspect unique and identifiable, if you spend your energy on that instead of creating many suspects, that's where you're going to create the challenge for your reader. So if you aim for between 4 and 8 suspects, that's a reasonable number of characters for your reader to remember and identify with, and for you to work into the story as your detective interviews them and then ponders what they've said and tries to reason out the differences between what one suspect said and what another suspect said. So 4 to 8 is a really good number. You'll have just enough suspects to keep your reader perplexed and perplex your sleuth, which is the fun part of the writing part of writing a mystery. The other part is that great suspects make a reader care. They care about the story, they care about the puzzle, and you want that to happen. So the mystery genre is all about giving your reader a guessing game. And your detective leads the reader through the game, through the story, and suspects put the puzzle in context. They are the context of the story, and each suspect has a role to play in guiding the detective toward the final solution. And the fun part for the reader is the reader knows that one of those suspects is the actual villain. And so that's where you keep piquing their interest in, keeping them guessing. All right. In their interactions with the detective, the suspects give information and they conceal information. And they create context for your reader about how they fit into the story. And each suspect knows the villain differently. Not the villain, I'm sorry. Each suspect knows the victim differently. And each suspect interacts with your sleuth, exhibiting their personality traits and their manner of speaking and their motivations to help or hinder your detective as they are trying to solve the crime. So when you build curiosity and connection to each suspect, you deepen the reader's involvement in your story. And if they like a suspect, they're going to have an emotional response, and it'll be something like, oh, no, don't make it her as the villain. And at the opposite end of the spectrum, if a reader dislikes a suspect, they will root for the detective to understand the suspect's relationship to the victim. So with all these pluses and minuses, as it were, it's really easy to build mystery and suspense and tension into your story by giving your detective and your reader challenges about what the true motivation of each of the suspects is. So a distinct, rich character development makes each suspect relatable for your reader. Plus, well-developed characters help you raise questions and build tension through their interactions with the sleuth. So then, just a little tip if you're writing a psychological mystery like P.D. James or Elizabeth George or Anne Cleves, going deep into your characters gives your reader more to ponder. All of those writers have a lot of psychological depth to each of the suspects. And so if you're wondering how to build that psychological depth, those are good writers to read, to understand how you build that tension using the psychology of the suspects. The main idea as a writer is that you want to manage your suspects to give your reader satisfaction. And of course, the satisfaction is try as much as they want to solve that crime before the detective does. You're not going to let that happen. All right. So when building your mystery, it's important to paint a picture of the type of people you want to introduce. So each suspect, you want to give them a full description, complete with unique identifiers, and those identifiers will fix the character in the reader's mind. So when they pop up 50, 75, even 100 pages later, they're like, oh yeah, I remember him, okay? And they're going to remember the emotional reaction they had to that character. That's why it's important to make those suspects very three-dimensional. So you can do this in a variety of ways, such as using your mystery suspects that readers will care about and understand, and those emotional connections bond the reader to the characters and the story. So while it may seem, just a footnote about this, while it may seem like a mystery is plot driven because there's a crime and then the detective has to work out all the details in order to solve the crime, it is the emotional connection that your reader has with the characters that really bond them to your story and make them remember your story after they finished reading it. So for you as a writer, just remember that the more details you provide, the greater the satisfaction for your reader. Okay, I hope that helps. Suspects really are our nuts and bolts, our meat and potatoes of creating our mystery. Otherwise, the detective would just go right to solving the crime and we wouldn't have a story and your readers wouldn't have very much fun and we wouldn't have very much fun creating our stories. So I hope that helps. And if you're a beginning mystery writer and all of it seems a little bit overwhelming, I have a course, Write a Killer Mystery, and link is in the description below. Check it out. It walks you through every step of creating a mystery story so you can deliver for your readers. All right, thank you. Keep writing. And don't forget to subscribe and click that little notification bell so you'll know when the next episode of Write a Killer Mystery is here.